IDW Sonic 2019 Annual. The story starts out with Tangle being happy in her hometown that someone showed up, and it's actually Whisper. I guess Whisper was really lonely to actually show up here when right now she should have no preference for Tangle over anyone else. She hugs her. I always liked how nice she was to her. She wants to give her a tour and shows her the bakery, a must for every breakfast. She also shows the salon, and Tangle, who's eating some bread showing us what she likes to eat, explains that she keeps the salon in business buying their brushes because she tears through them trying to keep her tail neat. So there's actually a big drawback to having her tail. Wow, I'm not sure I wanted to hear about that. But why does she care about keeping her tail neat? I like that Whisper was open-minded enough to get something to eat from that bakery. Tangle wants to show Whisper the Mineral Museum run by her best friend Jewel. And Jewel says she always had to look out for her when she was growing up with her because she's impulsive. Jewel explains that they got a collection of jewels over the years because Tangle found them looking for adventure. Wait, what? Tangle's a jewel thief? Or am I expected to believe she just miraculously stumbled into and tripped over cut jewels on the ground while looking for adventure? It would make sense if it was explained that they were all gems that fell out of Rouge's bag while she was flying with it at night after stealing the gems. But that'd be good writing, so we'd never be told that. I guess by making sure she came back alive, Jewel means that she was with Tangle on those adventures. So eventually, with all of those jewels, she put together a museum. I guess she managed to get a museum curator's license to do this. I'm really impressed that the writer actually cared enough to explain how the museum came to be. But again, there's a hole in the backstory. How did Tangle find gems just because she kept looking for adventure? That's convenient. At least it's surprisingly sweet of Whisper to admit that the museum is beautiful. I never thought she'd care. Tangle asks where the sunlight went, and Whisper gets her weapon out because she heard a scream when nobody else around her did. I guess she has better hearing than a lemur. The door gets sent open by the Babylon rogues who want to rob the museum. Why did Jet wait until after he opened the doors to tell his teammates which places to go to? Sure, he's the leader and he's dumb, but you'd think Wave would be in charge of making all the plans because she's the only smart one. And Wave doesn't even question this. But I guess it makes sense that since they're on fast airboards, Jet would be confident enough to think he wouldn't be stopped in all the time he was talking. Except Whisper had a weapon pointed at them already. Wouldn't she have just shot the rogues with her wisp on while Jet was blathering on? This sucks. She didn't need to be written to have already been ready for them. Too bad, I was taking the story seriously before this. Don't most museums have a museum guard? Wouldn't the guard have shot Jet in all the time he was talking? Amateur move right there. It's surprisingly interesting that Jewel's head gets mistaken for a jewel of its own and she's picked up by Storm because she was curled up in the ball. Even if she obviously would have hid in a normal place instead of in plain sight. So she ends up kidnapped even though Tangle called out for Jewel. Meaning she's clearly referring to a person named Jewel. Tangle flings herself with her tail connected to the door so that she and Whisper go towards their blimp. And Whisper fires a weapon. So why didn't Whisper just use her flying wisp power instead of them needing to be flown? I guess if they want fast forward momentum, they need Tangle to fling them. Jet fortunately explains why he needed to steal the gems. He wants to keep his gear in top shape. And I guess they think that getting regular jobs to earn money would be beneath them. But why would they need money for that? Wave can make anything. Couldn't Wave have kept his gear in top shape for free? I guess they need money for the materials for that. And they're above stealing the materials? Wave calls Storm a moron for kidnapping Jewel, and Jet says that if Tangle, who's suddenly on the ship just fine when she thought they wouldn't make it, wants Jewel back, they'll have to race for her. Why does Jet want to risk keeping Jewel with him? Isn't it obvious that he wouldn't want her around? I'm with Wave here when she tells him off that they're thieves, not kidnappers. But if the writer knew he was writing Jet to be out of his mind, why did he write it anyways? Jet explains that Storm made them look incompetent, so they have to save face. Finally, it's explained what species Jewel is. She's a beetle. That's not what beetles look like. Why the fuck couldn't they have kept things simple and kept calling her a bee? She's clearly based on Charmy Bee. Fuck that, I'm still thinking of her as a bee person. Even Charmy looks nothing like a bee. So, that's what Moby and bees look like. So she looks more like a Mobian bee than a beetle. As Jet and Wave argue, Tangle puts her tail around the bags, and fortunately Wave tells Jet that if he's so worried about saving face, why is he wasting time bickering in front of them? So he tells Storm to toss them out. But they dive from that, so Wave's not above that? Or does Jet somehow think she's fine with being murderers but not kidnappers? What makes Jet so surprised that Storm tossed Jewel out? It actually made me giggle a little to see Jewel scream with huge text with tears while Jet yells, "Not like that!" But come on, I thought that was what Jet meant. What else could he have meant? Why is Jewel so startled? She can fly to safety anyways. How did Jet expect to toss them out of the blimp then? He told them to do that when the blimp hadn't landed. Apparently, Jewel hits her wing on a part of the blimp on the way out, so she can't fly and falls out. Whisper is scared of another friend of hers dying, so there's actually foreshadowing to her origin story, and she goes after her to save her. Jet tells Storm that now he made them look incompetent and violent. Yeah, apparently he's against violence. Wave says that now they've got to save her and calls him a jerk. That's satisfying. But it's a bit weird to make a thief like Wave 100% of the time an audience surrogate. As she keeps showing up, she'll keep being like this. It makes me wonder why she bothers hanging out with these people, because she's clearly not compatible with them the way she is. The only thing she has in common with them is that she's okay with stealing jewels. But why? I mean, she could invent stuff and sell that stuff. She doesn't have to do that to make money. Like, I guess she's just really lonely and desperate for their companionship. Tangle casually jumps out of the blimp, and it's naturally lampshaded that she seems crazy because it doesn't seem like she should be able to survive such a fall. Especially when Whisper is so far below her. She has the loot with her, and Wave decides to just go because today's been a hassle, and they'd be ready for them the next time, I guess is her logic. Predictably, Tangle and Jewel get saved by Whisper's flying wisp, which she for some reason took forever to use as she was holding a falling person, because I guess she was waiting for Tangle. Back at the museum, Jewel thanks them both, as I'm grateful that the rogues were more in character and merely tried to steal gems instead of attacking the town for Eggman. Whisper's gonna talk as if they attacked the town later, but they clearly didn't if they just took some gems from one place. Tangle hugs Jewel and the Wisps hug her too. She thanks Whisper and they fist bump with Tangle's tail. In the next story, Sonic's flying the plane for a change while Tails is on the wing of it. That's showing some actual creativity, so I wonder if the story isn't by Flynn, because I know some of the stories here aren't. But I don't think I care enough about the uncreative IDW comic to look up who wrote every single story. Anyways, Tails says it's more of an aileron roll than a barrel roll, and Sonic fortunately thanks him for letting him pilot again. Tails says he wants to get ready for whatever they might face next in peacetime, and that means new tech. He says the booster is super powerful, so they'll take it easy and do a few straightaways and then call it a day to avoid putting the tornado under too much stress. Then they have to deal with a badnik out of nowhere that didn't show up on radar, apparently because of the armor on it. That makes sense, right? Tails says that with its speed, it's a stealthy bulk carry. I guess that's new too. Sonic starts speeding the plane after it, and Tails warns him that the booster is designed for straightaways and not dives. And Sonic can't hear him over the sound of the wings creaking. It makes sense that Sonic would screw things up from recklessness when he's piloting the plane. Luckily, he can hear Tails when he warns him that they could crash. Tails says that it's trying to lose them in an island canyon, so they'll have to cut the booster power to stay in one place. Sonic says that he smashed the button too enthusiastically. I guess that makes sense, because if he's able to accelerate so fast, he could break a button by pressing it too fast. They've never had a story like this in the tornado before. Tails says the islands are full of volcanic vents, producing wild currents in a canyon like this that the robot wouldn't consider. Tails says there's geysers nearby, so he wants them to ride an updraft and get the drop on the robot. He wants to drop their payload, and reasons that he can just make another one. So Tails says now, and the robot gets hit by lava, but is still remotely attacked after that? Sonic considerately says he doesn't want Tails to lose the booster just because he was a bad pilot. That's a surprise. So he lands on the robot himself, and Badnik bounces back to Tails, who grabs his hand. He thanks Tails and calls him Bud, and that's how the booster is. Which immediately made me predict that it would turn out to be broken anyways. Tails says it's capable, but they'll have to keep flying until it runs out of fuel. He wants to radio the Resistance to recover the crate and stick the landing. So ultimately it was just a story where they chased after a badnik and destroyed it. In the next story, Blaze asks for Silver because apparently Amy told her that she might find him out here, but wouldn't tell her what Silver or Blaze might be doing, for some reason. Silver says he's definitely not here, and Blaze wants to go after him as something smashes. Huh? Then she sees a blue thing, and Silver is startled as he's holding a bunch of things with his telekinesis, like a shovel and a bucket. Why is he acting so scared of Blaze? Does he have a crush on her? He says he's got this, and if the writing was good, he would. But instead something bonks him on the head out of nowhere for no reason. Huh? I didn't see where it fell from, so why'd that happen? Surprisingly, that didn't knock him out. Blaze nicely helps him up and asks him if he's growing vegetables. Something that makes his character a bit more interesting because he's trying a new hobby like a normal person. But Silver's been sucking at it so far, which I guess is why he wanted to hide it from her. Because he's not the type of person who'd be embarrassed of doing something soft. It makes sense that Silver's a plant lover because there's nothing like all this greenery in his future. This goes off 06 where he loved the future because of all the grass. So I like this. He says that naturally when Amy told him that he could grow his own, he got excited. He says he doesn't get it. He dug around, put them in the ground, made sure everything had nice labels, and watered everything twice. I guess it makes sense that he's never heard of fertilizer after his life in the future, if there's no greenery. But, well, if Amy didn't tell Blaze what Silver was doing, I guess Silver ran off to do this without telling Amy about his plan. So of course she went and told him to go get fertilizer. I have to wonder what the hell Silver ate in the future if there was no greenery though. Maybe there's still worm farms? And it's just that he never saw any because they were so far away from him. Because you can't just survive off meat. You'd think Silver's Ruin's future wouldn't be able to have ranches or farms. You'd think they'd all be hunters and gatherers, and the gatherers would be gathering plants. Or did they all just eat nutrient pills? But explaining that would be not lazy. Silver says that the weeds keep getting in, but the good plants just don't listen. Blaze uses fire to get rid of the plants, and then tells him to turn the ashes into soil. So for once she uses her fire in a peaceful way, which suits the calm personality she usually has. She's surprisingly smart enough to explain that this garden was planted on a battlefield and the chemicals from the bombs have made the earth hard and acidic, so that plants can't grow in it. They cared enough to explain this, but not what Silver ate in the future. So the story cuts to Silver successfully growing stuff. And I hope we're supposed to believe there was a huge time skip to explain this. Because it took more than a few seconds. Oh great, a story about Ruff and Tumble. Ruff says he's found the lost pyramid of Eggman. Tumble asks if Eggman abandoned it for a reason and is scared because of it. Oh, I guess he means a toxic spill or something, or a pharaoh's curse. Ruff wants to make money off the robots and weapons stashed in this place. Good! Screw Eggman anyways! And if they succeed, that'll keep him from using those things. I'm guessing they'll fail because they're the designated incompetent henchmen moves that don't need to exist. One of them steps on something that makes some spiked walls try to crush them. The most stereotypical ancient ruin trap ever. We saw it in Sonic Boom too. Did Ruff just spin dash to get away from those walls? That's competent, but he never did that around Sonic. So I guess the story being non-canon according to its worst writer is the only explanation for that. Tumble finally explains that he was scared of this place because of legends that this place is cursed. They get startled in Ruff's tedious boasting that he's not scared by Rouge, who wants treasure. Why is Ruff disappointed that Rouge is not a hero? Why would he insult her for being a thief and call her no good when they are thieves? It's not funny that they're hypocrites. I guess he's just trying to manipulate her into feeling too bad to keep stealing so that he can keep the goods. Because they're one-dimensional bad guys, so why would they have any kind of moral standards? He uses his skunk powers and runs, and they all get threatened by the egg golem because fuck creativity. As well as logic because I'm pretty sure Eggman permanently defeated that thing in SA2. And since IDW insists on the games being treated like a canon part of its past, that means this is a continuity error. Unless this is somehow a second pyramid base of Eggmans with an egg golem in it. So that's another good reason to call this non-canon. I mean, Shadow exists in this comic, so SA2 has to be kinda canon. Rouge says they need to listen for the remote and seems to disappear, and the idiots magically burst through the egg golem and make it explode in one attack. I'm supposed to believe they have super strength apparently. And yet when Tumble threw Sonic when he was in Spin Dash form, he didn't burst through the wall and every subsequent wall afterwards. And these guys lost every fight to Sonic. I guess that's a continuity error and another reason it can't be canon. These guys are idiots. They don't deserve to have a badass moment. I expected them to get pummeled. We would have preferred to see that. People would prefer to see that. I also wondered if Rouge would fly inside the egg golem and find a remote or something. But instead she shows up covered in bandages and tells them to not let the bandages touch them or they'll be doomed like her forever. Where does she get the bandages? So this scares even Ruff into running away because I guess he has enough affection for his superstitious friend to believe about curses after seeing this. Well, at least this was probably the best use of these two characters because I didn't have to be absolutely livid with them for thinking they could easily beat Sonic in a fight. They're better when alone. Rouge tells someone out of nowhere that he won't need his booby traps anymore because she just assumes that nobody will come anywhere near this place after these guys tell them it's cursed. What makes her think that they'll tell anybody about this curse? Or that they'll get believed about it? Thankfully for Rouge, she's told to help herself to the treasure anyways. This is so much better than Sonic X where she always fails to get the gems. Oh, then there's another story that I could tell was drawn by John Gray immediately. I never thought he'd draw something in IDW. I thought he was let go. We see the first meeting of the Sonic fan club. Should I care? I could have assumed he had a couple of fan clubs, so it makes sense. And one of the people here, who reminds me of one of the Animaniacs, is blowing bubblegum. Someone's jealous of the club president because he got to bang the gavel. How old are they? But it does make sense that someone would think he should be the club president if he's the fastest one here. Why did he immediately get doubted that he could run fast like Sonic can if the same logic for Sonic speed would also apply to anyone else? If Sonic can be fast, why not someone else? They smartly decide to have a contest. But rather than suggesting a race outright, someone says that whoever is most like Sonic gets to be the club president. I think I can accept John Gray's weird art style here because we aren't seeing it pollute the way the actual main characters look. For all I know, this is how these guys are supposed to look. Plus it's just a filler story. One cheats with a head start and they try to imitate Sonic's ball form, and all crash into each other. One of them wants to prove he's the bravest by fighting a badnik, even though it's clearly electrified. Oh, but then after beeping, it doesn't blow up and its electricity is just going out of its eyes. They should at least throw sticks at it. Tangle shows up and sees the kids ineffectively smacking at the robot. One of them somehow thinks he can damage an eggplant by biting its foot. The only one who seems to have any chance of being effective is the Animaniac, who's hitting it with a spiked mace he apparently has. Suddenly Tangle reveals that she's arrogant too because she wants him to have a fan club of her too, which at least gives her another personality trait finally. But with her being a daredevil who liked fighting robots, she was already a female Sonic without being arrogant too. Then she apparently ties herself into knots with her tail, and the kid tells her that while she was doing that, Sonic zoomed over and smashed the robot for them. I just figured it was supposed to be her because she was in the previous panel and there was no sign of Sonic. How is it in character for Sonic to not stop to get praised after he smashes that robot? So all these stories were kinda good. The first story was about the Babylon Rogue stealing gems from Jewel's museum, which is somehow made of jewels that Tangle somehow found. And Jewel ends up kidnapped by accident because her head looks like a jewel and she's taking the dumb risk of hiding in plain sight instead of behind a desk like Tangle. So that was forced. Pretty out of character for someone cautious. Then she gets her wing damaged when she's thrown out of the blimp by Storm, which justifies why Whisper had to save her with her wisp as well as Tangle. It was nice of Tangle to give Whisper a tour of the town. Nobody's nicer to Whisper than her. The second story impressed me by having Sonic fly the tornado while Tails is on the wing of the plane. And while there's no apparent reason to have that happen because Sonic's obviously going to be a reckless pilot, and he is, I guess I can assume he begs Tails for it, since he thanks him and says it's been forever. It was interesting to see him pilot the plane to test out a new plane booster, and to find out that the plane might crash if it was flown badly enough. And it actually didn't, apparently. Also, the booster isn't destroyed, surprisingly. And another surprise is that while they do encounter a badnik in the sky, it's not a whole bunch of them that they have to fight in a ripoff of Sonic 2, and it says one radar invisible crate carrier. and it gets hit by lava from a geyser. And Sonic was considerate enough to attack it himself to avoid Tails sacrificing his booster. All of that was creative and impressed me. Although in retrospect, it is pretty boring that the entire story was dedicated to them destroying one robot. The third story is interesting because it takes advantage of Silver's love of nature in 06 for the first time by having him want a hobby as a vegetable grower. He also grows sunflowers. It makes sense that he wouldn't know what's going wrong because of his future. And Blaze surprises me because instead of suggesting fertilizer, she makes him some out of the ashes of his crops, which is smart of her. Sure, it was mundane to see Silver have a hobby like this with no action, but just because it's not what you come to Sonic for doesn't automatically make it bad. It makes Silver more relatable and lovable, actually doing something with a part of his personality from earlier. It makes sense that the two would interact together on their own after forever after 06 had them together. The fourth story is the most problematic. It insists on having Rough and Tumble in it. But thankfully they aren't so bad here because they don't think they can best Sonic. And instead they're trying to break into Eggman's old pyramid base. A lack of creativity ensues. While we never saw a spiked wall in the base before, so that's good effort, it's a very stereotypical trap. It was impressive that they beat the Egg Golem in one attack together and that Rough can spin dash. But where does she get the bandages? Good thing Rouge did get Eggman's treasure after all. If any story in this issue would deserve to be called non-canon, it would have to be just this one. Because it creates a couple of continuity errors. First off, by having the Egg Golem still functional after SE2. And by making me wonder why Rough and Tumble were such wimps against Sonic in fights, when apparently Rough can spin dash and they have the super strength to one-shot the Egg Golem. The fifth story with the worst start is about Sonic's fan club members in Tangle's town having a contest to prove who's the most like Sonic so that they can determine who should be the club leader. That makes sense too, and it's another creative story for the series. It was impressive that they all tried to have ball forms of their own, and at least tried to fight an egg pond, no matter how intimidating it was to them. And I never saw Tangle get herself tied up in knots with her tail before either.